Home Secretary James Cleverly joins me now. Home Secretary, lovely to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
And you.
What's your reaction to Nigel Farage's claims about the West and those in the EU being in part to blame for Putin's invasion of Ukraine?
Well, I was at the NATO-Russia Council before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and the Russian delegation were putting out all this propaganda about how they've been provoked. These are Putin's justifications, and to have a British voice echoing those justifications, I think, is completely wrong. The sad truth, of course, is that from reform candidates across the country, we've seen a whole range of really inappropriate comments, including calling into question Churchill's resolute defiance of Nazism, saying that somehow Churchill should have appeased Hitler. And the truth of the matter is, people are increasingly beginning to understand that this is not necessarily a party that shares its values, and that even if they did vote for reform, what it would most likely do is hold the door open for a large Labour majority, with all that comes with that.
OK, but isn't he right in suggesting the Western world was asleep at the wheel on this? I mean, it was only in 2012 that David Cameron was bringing Putin along to the judo at the London Olympics. 2013, we had the G8 with Russia included. The following year, he invaded Crimea.
Well, the point is, there is a strong track record of Western leaders and Western countries trying to bring Russia into the fold, as it were, to try and show Russia and Russians that there was a peaceful, prosperous future for them. Time and time again now, we've seen Putin reject the peaceful, more prosperous options, and he's waged conflict in Ukraine, in Russian troops in Georgia, Russian troops in other countries around Eastern Europe. And to suggest somehow that those countries brought it upon themselves, I think, is victim blaming of the worst order.
OK, I can hear you competing with How Great Thou Art in the background there, Home Secretary, so thank you very much indeed. You've got a little chorus accompanying this interview this morning.
It's a lovely hymn, by the way.
I was going to ask you about this whole situation with this Tory betting scandal. We've now got another person implicated, Nick Mason, the Chief Data Officer. I've had Kwasi Kwarteng in the studio saying some of the people that seem to be embroiled in this, and I appreciate they're only allegations at this stage, but what they do is they indicate a lack of seriousness at the heart of Number 10. You know, you're fighting for your electoral life. We've got people allegedly sort of more concerned about whether they can make a few quid on the side. Michael Gove has said it's another Partygate. He's not wrong, is he?
Well, look, I'm at a disadvantage because we've got clear instructions from the Gambling Commission that we should not be discussing this. We should not be discussing individuals. We should not be discussing what's going on. So I'm very limited in what I can say. My view has always been the case that people in government should focus on delivering for the people of this country. People who are officials of the party should be focused on returning as many Conservative MPs as possible so we can form a government so that we can serve the British people. And anything other than that is inappropriate. So whilst I'm not going to discuss any of the details, people should focus exclusively on the people we're here to serve.
You must be very angry about it. I mean, we could tell the Prime Minister was furious in his TV debate last week.
Yeah, and I share the Prime Minister's views on this. As I say, we've got instructions from the Gambling Commission that we should not be discussing it, which limits very much what I can say about this. But my view has always been, as I say, very, very simple. We're here to serve the British people, and anyone not doing that to the fullest of their abilities is wrong, very wrong.
Let's discuss something that you can certainly talk about, because you've written about it today in the Sunday Telegraph, Home Secretary. You've talked about the risk from Labour opening the door to 100,000 migrants. You're talking about them joining that EU pact on migrants. But at the same time, won't people watching and listening to this interview think, God, he's got a bit of brass neck? You've let in thousands of illegal migrants by dinghy across the Channel, haven't you?
Well, stopping the boats, fighting those people smuggling gangs is incredibly hard. They're brutal, but also they have adapted their tactics. And of course, I am determined to continue doing everything I can to stop the boats. That's why we have a cross-border organisation, the Small Boats Operation Command, commanded by a former British Army general. That's why we have immigration enforcement, who actually send people back to their home countries every week. Dozens of people get deported every week. And we have the Rwanda scheme, which is about that deterrent. So we are doing all of those things and more. The Labour Party are claiming they are going to do less. They're going to scrap the Rwanda scheme. Their big announcement was the creation of a border command, which already exists, and a returns unit, which already exists. So they're claiming they are going to do less in the hope that they're going to achieve more. It's just not credible. It's not easy, and no one is pretending it is. But the Labour's position on this, and this deal that they would do with the EU, which saw us as a net recipient previously,
but they deny that they're doing that deal.
Get more people rather than less.
Labour says they've ruled out doing that deal. Are they lying?
But no. Keir Starmer made a series of explicit commitments to the Labour Party when he ran for leadership, and he ditched every single one of them. He campaigned tirelessly to make Jeremy Corbyn Prime Minister, and then claimed he didn't really mean it. The simple fact of the matter is, we know the Labour Party would be soft on immigration. They will ramp up taxes, and they will cut a deal with the EU, which will see us being brought back into the gravitational pull of the European Union and be the net recipient, as I say, of 100,000 migrants.
But Home Secretary, with the greatest respect, you haven't got a leg to stand on broken promises, have you? The Conservatives have been promising the electorate that they would bring down immigration, legal and illegal, since 2010. You've been promising that for 14 years. And you've never delivered on the promise. So this is why people are supporting reform. You say a vote for reform is a vote for Labour. The electorate is saying a vote for reform is a vote to bring immigration, legal and illegal, down, because the Conservatives are seemingly incapable of doing it.
Well, I was made Home Secretary in the autumn of last year, and I immediately took action to bring down legal migration. Those numbers are now coming down. 300,000 people who would previously have had the right to be here no longer have the right to be here through legal migration routes. I took action to make sure foreign students were not allowed to bring family members. That is already in place. I took that action. It came into force of January of this year, and I am making sure that those flights to Rwanda are ready to go shortly after the general election if a Conservative government is returned. And the fact is that political parties, whether it be Reform or any others, it's easy to point at things that we don't like. That's the easy bit. Doing something about it is more challenging, and they don't have answers. And the main reason why they don't have answers, of course, is because even at the most optimistic end of the polling spectrum, they are envisaged to maybe get up to 3, 4, maybe 5 members of Parliament, tops. But in doing so would hand Labour a huge majority, and Labour voted against border control over 130 times. Keir Starmer took the knee rather than backing the police officers during BLM. Keir Starmer tried to make Jeremy Corbyn, who heralded anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, into number 10. That is what a vote for reform will inevitably do to our country. And I will fight tooth and nail until 10 o'clock on the 4th of July to prevent that from happening.
Isn't there something a bit disingenuous about that position? The people that have really handed Labour the prospect of a supermajority are the Conservatives, because they failed to deliver on their manifesto pledges. You said immigration would come down, it's gone up. You said tax and VAT would come down, it's gone up. So why can't you just be honest? You're talking about broken promises by Starmer, and that's fair enough. Maybe you've got a point. But the problem for the Conservatives, and why people are flocking to reform or just not bothering to come out, is that they don't believe you when you make these pledges. You do understand that, surely, Home Secretary?
Since we had our last manifesto, we have had 2 once-in-a-century events back-to-back. We had COVID, which was an event of such magnitude that no one could have predicted. We dealt with it, actually, by international comparisons, pretty well. And we also had Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine and the impact that that had on fuel prices, on inflation. We have taken action to bring inflation back down to 2%. We've started cutting taxes for working people because that is in our DNA. That is what, of course, we want to do.
Why aren't
the Labour
the polls
Party,
moving
which is
then?
the only opposition. Look, I can only do what I can do, and candidates can only do what candidates can do, which is continue to take the message to the British people. We are determined to protect them from Labour tax cuts. We are determined to protect our borders and bring down immigration, and we've started doing both of those. Labour would reverse all of those things. And the simple truth is I get the frustration. I share the frustration. Of course, all of us in government would wish to have achieved more, but there were some unprecedented events which put barriers in our way. But we are absolutely determined to continue to bring down taxes, as we've started to do, continue to bring down immigration, as we've started to do, and protect the British people from the disaster that would be a Labour government led by a man who has been so inconsistent, even to his own party, that we cannot take for granted any of the things that he has said.
But Home Secretary, do you think, I had Alexander Downer in the studio last week saying that you're concentrating too much on blue and you're criticising reform. What you actually need to do is take the gloves off. And actually, Rishi Sunak's been a bit too Queensberry rules with Keir Starmer, that you should just go heavily in attack mode now. You've got 12 days left to save this. Can the campaign be saved for the Tories?
Well, there are, I think, a lot of people who haven't decided how they're going to vote. And when I speak to people on the doorstep, they are clearly very uncomfortable with the prospect of a Labour government. They are very uncomfortable with Keir Starmer's inconsistencies. I don't think that it is about personal attacks. I don't think that's what Oliver Dowden was saying. But what we are going to do is continue to highlight the risk of a Labour government to the economics of this country, to the social cohesion of this country, and we are also going to highlight the fact that if you don't want that Labour government, then the most credible way of making sure that we don't have that economic incompetence at the heart of a Labour government is to vote Conservative at this election. And that's the message I will continue to put out. I'll also put out our positive alternative as well.
All right. Home Secretary James Cleverly, lovely to speak to you this morning. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.